Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at AI today, but with a twist. Imagine an AI learning much, much faster, more efficiently. Not by just brute force, but by actually taking cues from, well, from our own brains. Specifically, from these tiny things called neocortical pyramidal cells, the basic building blocks. That's the core idea behind this beyond attention architecture we're diving into. We've got a stack of sources here. And our mission, really, is to get what this is all about. This biological angle, these triadic loops, and this ON complexity claim. It sounds like a big deal.
It really is. What's so interesting, I think, is how it tackles relevance, finding the important stuff in tons of data. That's hard for brains and for current AI, right?
Right. Like you said, usually models just ingest everything and then try to sort it out. It sounds exhausting.
Exactly. Like reading the whole library just to find one fact, as you put it.
Yeah.
Beyond attention flips that. Inspired by those brain cells, it tries to actively pre-select, pick out relevant info before doing the heavy lifting.
Pre-select, like how our brain instinctively tunes things out, focuses on what matters.
Precisely. And the mechanism for that, based on the sources, involve these triadic neuronal level modulation loops.
Okay, sounds technical, but the breakdown seems to be about questions, clues, and hypotheses. Q, K, and V.
Yep. Think of it like this. The system has hypotheses, V, it looks at potential clues, K, in the data, and asks questions, Q, about them. But it's not static. The results feed back. They modulate the next round of questions, which refines the hypotheses again. It's iterative.
So it's like a feedback loop, testing ideas, getting new info, updating the ideas.
Exactly like that. Which brings us back to the biology. Those pyramidal cells, they have different zones for different inputs, right? Apical and basal dendrites.
Yeah, the sources mention apical dendrites handle context, basal gets the raw input, and different levels of that apical input connect to different mental states.
That's the fascinating link. High apical input, that seems to correlate with internal stuff like REM sleep, dreaming, imagination, context rules. Lower apical input is more like deep sleep, and the model maps this. High context for Q and V lets hypotheses V run wilder, sort of like imagination.
Okay, and moderate context.
Moderate context focuses the questions Q on specific clues, K, more targeted, like focused perception, taking in the outside world deliberately.
Makes sense. So building on that biological efficiency, let's talk about the big technical claim. Speed, ON, complexity.
Right. This is potentially the game changer. Standard transformers, they have this ON2 problem.
Meaning computation explodes as the input sequence N gets longer.
Exactly. It gets really expensive fast. Beyond attention claims approximate ON, linear scaling.
Which means if it holds up, it could handle much longer inputs, way more efficiently, less compute, maybe less data needed.
That's the promise, making large-scale AI potentially more scalable, more accessible. Huge implication.
Okay, that ON is a massive claim. But are there catches? The sources mention any limitations or trade-offs for you listening?
Well, sure. Like any system, it could get stuck on bad initial ideas,
Yeah.
biased hypotheses leading it astray. And the work seems focused on certain neural inputs right now, so there's more complexity to capture. But the potential directions look really interesting.
Okay, so beyond just being faster, how does thinking more like us with these internal hypotheses and loops change what the AI can do?
Well, by letting those hypotheses evolve internally, it can basically run simulations. That's where the emulation of imagination or internal thought comes in. And using the clues to guide questions lets it model that selective, high-level perception. It's shown promise in games, vision, text, diverse areas.
So stepping back from the mechanics,
Yeah.
what about the bigger picture, building AI that forms these internal representations, these hypotheses?
Yeah, this is where it gets quite profound. The sources float this idea, the profound awareness hypothesis.
Okay.
It basically suggests that maybe, just maybe, a kind of awareness could arise from how well the system's internal model, its QKV loops, its hypotheses, actually matches up with external reality dynamically.
So if the internal model aligns well with what's actually happening, that's closer to understanding or awareness.
That's the hypothesis. If they don't align, you get distortion, misinterpretation. It really makes you think about what understanding is.
Wow, okay. So wrapping this deep dive up, we've seen the beyond attention architecture inspired by brain cells using these QKV loops for potentially ON efficiency. It's aiming to mimic human imagination and perception, not just process data blindly.
Right. It's a conceptual shift moving towards AI that generates its own internal thought based on biological ideas.
And that profound awareness hypothesis, linking internal models to reality. It leaves you with a big question, doesn't it? If awareness might emerge from how well an internal model reflects the world, and we're building machines getting better and better at creating and refining those models, what does that imply down the road?
Definitely something to ponder. We'll keep exploring these ideas in future deep dives.